I lingered in the kitchen for a quarter of an hour, grasping a pot that served no purpose. The meal had concluded. The children had departed. My husband lounged in the living room, idly flipping through cable channels that held no real interest for him. I uttered his name a single time, then 2 times. He kept his gaze fixed downward. I felt no anger, hardly a shock, simply empty. I placed the pot on the surface, transitioned to the sink, activated the water flow despite the absence of any grime. It was at that moment that I caught wind of it. His voice resonated, gentle, barely audible. "Are you all right?" I pivoted. Noah, my husband's younger brother, stood before me. He had only been with us for a week, recently emerged from a divorce, respectful, reticent, carrying the kind of sadness that made him gentle. He stood in the doorway, arms folded, his gaze locked solely on me. Leave the stove alone, not the correspondence. And a fissure formed deep within me, not from the way he looked at me. Yet, it dawned upon me that no one else had for months. Years maybe. "I'm fine," I lied. He acknowledged with a nod, yet remained still. It seemed as though tears were on the brink of spilling. That was the moment I nearly succumbed, because I was unaware that I possessed it. I had no idea it was apparent. It was only when he laid eyes on it. The space seemed to shrink, or perhaps merely nearer. And for the first time in what feels like an eternity, I pondered the possibilities of what might unfold if someone dared to bridge the gap that lay between us. He lingered for a moment before departing. Once he inquired about my well-being, Noah simply lingered, resting in the threshold, with arms still crossed, yet gentler now, at ease, as if he were meant to be there, more so than the man in the living room had ever been. I polished a flawlessly pristine counter, merely to maintain the rhythm of my hands, merely to conceal the tremors that were beginning to surface. "Is that how you always tidy up after dinner?" he inquired. "Absolutely not," I replied. "Only when I find myself in need of a task for my hands." He wore a smile, not the grin of a playful tease, a smile that conveyed understanding. "Indeed," he murmured softly. "I feel the same." My husband remained unmentioned in our conversation. His ex-wife remained unmentioned in our conversation. We lingered in silence, each of us acutely aware of the seconds slipping by. In that moment, the dish towel slipped from my grasp. Foolish. Awkward. A moment devoid of significance, until I leaned down to retrieve it, and he moved closer. Slow and steady. Far from it. Yet, it was just enough for me to sense his presence lingering behind me. Just close enough that when I rose, we were mere inches away from each other. His breath brushed against me before his voice reached my ears. "There's no need for deception with me." I pivoted, gradually, with great attention, as if hastening our steps might cause something to tumble, leaving us unable to restore it. "I'm not quite sure I understand what you're saying." "You do," he remarked. His gaze remained fixed, never wandering to my form. They remained steadfast. They simply kept mine, softly, as if I were something fragile and deserving of care. Then I heard my husband's voice calling from the other room. "Have you seen the remote?" And in an instant the enchantment shattered. Noah took a step back. I offered him the dish towel as if it were a protective barrier, and we both resumed our positions. Yet I promise, as he moved past me, his hand lightly grazed my lower back, and I've been ablaze ever since. Footsteps echoed in the distance, light and unhurried, merely a gentle, consistent cadence across the kitchen floor. The clock neared the stroke of midnight. Everyone should have been asleep. I descended to prepare some tea, decaffeinated, the sort I feign assists me in finding rest, despite my awareness that it truly does not. And then he entered the room. Noah. A simple t-shirt, casual comfort wear, unshod. His expression was one of surprise upon seeing me, yet there was no hint of discomfort. "Struggling to find rest?" I inquired. "Not quite," he replied. "I never engage in such things." He provided nothing beyond that. I refrained from inquiring. I filled a second mug with water, without a sound. He observed my movements in the kitchen as if he were committing to memory the way I operated in the stillness. as if it held significance. We gathered around the island, contrasting sides. A solid marble counter lay between us, yet it hardly felt like a barrier. That is no longer the case. Do you often find yourself awake at this hour? He inquired. It's only in those moments when I'm striving to quiet my mind. Concerning what? I hesitated. He was engaging in something far deeper than mere small talk. His intention was clear. I gazed into my cup of tea and murmured, I once believed I would have changed by this point. In what way is it different? Alive, I breathed softly. It lingered in the atmosphere, more prolonged than it ought to have been. And when I finally raised my gaze, his expression had transformed, not feeling sorry, unsurprised, simply expansive, as if echoing the experience of another who understood the essence of being alert in a world that had gradually lulled you into slumber. Silence enveloped us after that moment. We sat quietly sipping our drinks. Yet, as I rose to depart, he did as well. In that fleeting moment we lingered in the dim glow of the kitchen, our proximity palpable once more. He extended his hand toward my vacant mug. Our fingers brushed against each other. We stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. And then, he remained close. I didn't either. It was but a fleeting moment, perhaps a bit less. Yet, isn't that precisely where it all begins? Not with the mouth, not involving skin. Yet as time passes, with awareness, in lingering just a touch beyond the intended moment. Once the world has settled into slumber, the hour had grown late once more. The hour has slipped beyond midnight. The sort of stillness that seeps into the very fabric of the walls. The sort that allows you to perceive every sound, including the rhythm of your own heart. I had ascended to the upper floor quite early. I mentioned to my husband that I was feeling weary. He let out a low grunt from the couch, his gaze fixed on the same flickering channel he had been mindlessly cycling through for years. I chose not to wait for him. I perched on the edge of my bed, my hair still damp from a bath that brought me no solace, gazing vacantly into the void. In that moment it reached my ears. The groan of the fifth stair. It goes unnoticed by everyone else. Yet I certainly do. I consistently make it a point to do so. I remained still. I have just finished listening. And then gentle a tap on the doorframe. Not the entrance. The structure. As if he had always been aware that it was ajar. Indeed it was. Merely a touch. A fissure. Just a scant few inches. Yet it was sufficient for me to catch a glimpse of him. Noah. He stood there, clad in a simple white tee, his eyes deeper and more intense than I had ever witnessed before. He refrained from stepping in, remained silent. I simply waited. Perhaps I ought to have shut the door. I ought to have risen, pressed it closed, secured it tight. Merely a reminder for us both of where the boundary lay. Yet I refrained. I remained in my seat. Allow him to behold me. In that delicate shimmering robe I had never donned in the presence of another. In the gentle glow of the lamp, every shadow appeared as a beckoning promise. He locked his eyes with mine, and I uttered the tiniest remark. Just a faint murmur. Are you all right? His voice returned in a hushed tone, unwavering. I was reluctant to surrender to the night just yet. I inclined my head in agreement, remaining stationary. The door remains ajar. We lingered in that moment for almost a full minute. The kind of minute where your life doesn't change on the outside, yet within a transformation occurs. At last he gave a single nod and then turned his back. He failed to make his entrance. Yet, he was not compelled to do so. I failed to close the door behind him. I merely remained in my seat, pulse quickening. The air feels sparse. In that moment the distance separating us seemed to pulse with a perilous energy, far more threatening than the words we had exchanged. A knock echoed through the silence. This moment gentle, intentional, not within the confines of the frame, upon the threshold, and I unsealed it, completely, in a moment of spontaneity. Perhaps it's a case of overthinking. Noah lingered, one hand tucked into his pocket, the other grasping a book of mine. Initially he remained silent. I simply raised it. Sleep eluded me. I ought to have smiled. I should have suggested we chat in the kitchen as we used to. Yet I chose to step aside. Merely a touch. sufficient to grant him entry, merely at a distance. He stepped in as if oblivious to the peril that surrounded him, or perhaps he acted as he did, indifferent to the consequences. He perched on the edge of the armchair, gazing out the window. I settled onto the bed, exceedingly distant to be merely an error. We were too close to deny the sensations that enveloped us. "You possess a remarkable gift for words," he remarked, flipping through the pages of the book. "It seems as though you're perpetually caught in a dance of concealment and revelation." A chuckle escaped my lips. Silently, "That is precisely what I am undertaking." He raised his gaze directly at me. "There's no need for you to conceal anything in my presence." And then, that moment of stillness, the elongated moment where anticipation hangs heavy in the air. "And yet, you remain motionless, allowing fate to unfold." He remained at a distance. Yet he found no necessity for it, because my body had already experienced it. I inclined my body slightly, drawing closer. Only a small amount, just enough for my knee to graze his. That unexpected brush sent a jolt of electricity coursing up my spine. We stood still, caught in the moment. And then, gradually, his hand descended softly upon my knee, free from possessiveness, refraining from making assumptions, simply inquiring. "Instruct me to go," he murmured. I did not. I was unable to. I gazed at the spot where his fingers lingered on my skin, as if they had found their rightful home after a long absence. In that instant, clarity washed over me. The beginning was already upon them. Not the relationship, not the transgression, not the destruction, yet the necessity, the deep, tender yearning to be desired, by an unexpected hand. He remained silent, not through language. He simply gazed at me, for a duration that felt prolonged with a depth that seemed profound, to help me erase the memory of how much time had passed since anyone's eyes had rested there. Upon me, not behind me. "Keep your distance." Simply myself. His hand lingered on my knee, cozy, yet, as if it had been poised, yearning for a nod I lacked the courage to voice. And then, it shifted, fingertips gliding upwards, unhurried, intentional, until they vanished into the gentle folds of my robe. He lingered at my thigh, gentle and unassuming, free from greed, simply existing, anticipating. I ought to have spoken up. I should have stepped back. I ought to have recalled the name that adorned my ring finger. Yet all I could manage was to draw in a breath, superficial, unsteady, in a state of utter despair. His hand wandered gently, not merely across my skin, but through the depths of my silence. His voice emerged softly, intimate, as if sharing a secret meant only for me. "There's no need to feign disinterest in this." With my eyes shut tight, I surrendered to the darkness. Not due to any sense of shame. Yet it was precisely because I desired it. Heaven assist me, I did. More than mere contact. It's more than mere warmth. Yet the sensation of being selected. Not from a sense of duty. Yet longing. Unfiltered. Inarguably so. Perilous. As his thumb grazed the delicate skin of my thigh, a soft sound escaped my lips. A choice I hadn't embraced in ages. It was not a mere moan. It marked a comeback. To my physical form. To experience. To the woman I had concealed beneath obligations and subdued evenings and unblemished flesh. He refrained from seeking additional gain. He merely gazed at me. And I cast my gaze behind me. In that moment a fleeting spark ignited. I ceased to fulfill the role of my husband's wife, and began to embody the hidden truth of his brother. Sleep eluded me that night. Not even a moment. I reclined in bed, wrapped in the robe, acutely aware of the lingering warmth where his hand had rested. Every fiber of my being throbbed as if I had just emerged from a slumber, having drifted through a life I barely recognized for years. And at my side, my husband emitted a symphony of snores. With the back turned, inhaled deeply, unaware. At one moment I turned toward him, perhaps driven by guilt, or perhaps by some deep-seated instinct. My fingertips grazed his shoulder. He remained motionless. In that moment of clarity I came to understand. It had been 6 weeks since his hands had brushed against my skin. Not a mere kiss. No touch graced the small of my back. Not a single fleeting touch of tenderness. Ever since his brother took up residence, things have changed. I rose before the dawn's light graced the horizon, prepared a cup of coffee, observed it cascade in deliberate, measured streams as my hands quivered from an unnamed sensation. I convinced myself that it had come to an end, that it had scarcely transpired at all. Noah and I had yet to share a kiss. We remained clothed. There was neither a bed nor the sound of moaning, nor any sense of finality in the unraveling. Merely a hand, a gentle caress, a fleeting instant, just a moment. You can endure this moment, I murmured into the stillness. Yet, as the clock struck noon, I sensed it deep within my very being. The irritation, the pain, the allure. In that moment it became clear. I had been deceiving myself. I failed to put an end to it. I simply had no desire to do so, for the reason that he noticed me. And when someone gazes at you in that manner, as if they are aware of the essence of you, hidden beneath the passage of time, returning to a state of invisibility is no longer an option. The mirror beckons to you once more, stirring a familiar longing within. Even if it's crafted from the essence of another's sibling, even if it demands your all. I found myself folding towels. That concludes everything. Ordinary, homely, naive. The washer emitted a soft hum. The fragrance of lavender mingled with the comforting scent of warm cotton. Suddenly, from behind, I caught the unmistakable sound of the door clicking shut. The mechanism of security. With deliberate slowness I turned. Noah. His gaze locked onto mine as if he had reached his conclusion long before this moment. Perhaps it was just a few days prior. Perhaps it was the evening when I left my bedroom door ajar. Silence enveloped us. A silence hung in the air, devoid of any salutation. Nothing but authenticity. I simply desire. Silence envelopes. Assurance lingers. Hunger gnaws. He approached me with measured steps. Deliberate. Serene. Yet the atmosphere was thick with a sense of peril. Just say the word, he murmured. Should you find it necessary? Yet I chose not to. I was unable to. His hand wrapped around my waist. Steadfast. His grip was so commanding that it left me weak at the knees. The towel slipped from my grasp. It landed between us like the final justification. Then his lips met mine. Sweltering. Famished. And yet there was a certain reverence in his touch, as if he understood the boundaries that should not be crossed, yet felt an undeniable urge to connect with me regardless. My hands reached for him in a moment of instinctive yearning, gripped the fabric of his t-shirt tightly, glided beneath, discovered the complexion I had only envisioned. As he hoisted me onto the dryer, a sharp breath escaped my lips. Not out of shock. From solace. At last the strain shattered. At last I ceased the charade. As his hand slipped away the fabric of my robe, my thoughts ceased to exist. He took his time. He consumed voraciously, as if he had been longing to savor a forbidden desire, one that had always been just out of reach. And I allowed him to do so. I allowed him to explore what had remained uncharted for far too long. I allowed him to listen to me, every part of me, with each gentle, urgent sound I hadn't realized I had hidden away. We glided in unison, as if this dance were second nature to us, practiced 1,000 times before. Yet we had not. It was a vision we had merely conjured in our minds, time and again, until it was destined to happen. Following that moment, silence enveloped us. We lingered in that moment, entwined in both the heat and the chaos surrounding us. As he finally turned the key in the lock, his lips brushed softly against my shoulder. At one time, gentle, as if bound by a vow he was unsure how to fulfill. The following morning, I found myself unable to face my reflection. I made an effort. I stood before it, toothbrush clutched in hand, hair a chaotic mess, robe cinched too snugly, and awaited the return of a familiar reflection. Yet all that captured my attention was her. The woman who allowed her husband's brother to press his lips against her skin. The woman who sighed softly into another's touch in the laundry room, while her husband lingered in the adjacent space, sipping tepid coffee, absorbed in familiar reruns. I ought to have felt revulsion, filled with a sense of embarrassment, shattered. Yet the most disheartening aspect was, I was not. As warmth lingered within my body, It lingered softly in the air, a gentle echo of his touch. The memory lingers, the sensation of being cradled as if I were the sole woman in existence. On that particular day, I made an effort to maintain a facade of normalcy, washing garments, correspondence, preparing for dinner. Yet all seemed insubstantial. It felt as though I was cloaked in a version of myself that had long since ceased to fit. And then, just after 6:30, while I arranged the plates upon the table, I sensed his presence. Noah. In my wake. Near yet distant. The previous evening. I remained facing forward. "Please don't," I murmured. "It's not something we can discuss." Yet he remarked, "I have no regrets." My breath caught in my throat. For that very reason I did. Or so I believed. It wasn't until I glanced upward that I caught sight of my own reflection in the microwave door. Cheeks aglow, chest heaving, fingers quivering ever so slightly at the rim of a dinner plate. And I was aware. I had more to say. I lacked the strength. For the first time in years I found myself no longer fading away. I found myself wide awake. Vibrant. Flaming. And I yearned for it once more. Even if it shattered me. Even if it required feigning sincerity during yet another dinner with my husband presiding at the head of the table. As Noah sat opposite me, his gaze cast downward, his jaw clenched tight, and the memory of his hands lingered on my skin. It occurred once more. Yet on this occasion there was no sense of haste. It was neither in a laundry room nor concealed behind a locked door shrouded in darkness. It resided within the confines of his room. As the twilight deepened into a rich blue, my husband attended a dinner from which I had been conspicuously omitted. I rapped on the door, as if I were in desperate need of something. As if I wasn't already. Trembling with desire. Noah swung the door open. His lips remained uncurled. Remained silent. He receded and I advanced. The door clicked softly into place behind me. The stillness was overwhelming. I considered the possibility of us slipping back into that familiar charade once more. Imagine it was an error. Let's act as if the path that led us to this moment remains a mystery. Yet he refused to allow me. He extended his hand toward me as if he possessed an undeniable claim. As if I had found my rightful place within his grasp. I let him continue without interruption. This time there was a calm assurance in every movement. There is no frantic warmth. Merely a relentless dragging pace. He removed my garments as if I were crafted from the divine. Not taken. Unbroken. Divine. And then, as his lips brushed against my neck, his hands encircled my thighs, his breath quivering against my shoulder. He uttered those words. Hannah. Only a single time. My identity. As if in a moment of devotion. As if he were savoring it. As if it held significance. And I broke apart. For years no one had expressed it in such a way. He is not my husband. No one at all. This man whom I was never meant to desire. And I desired him more fiercely than I craved virtue. I entwined my fingers in his hair, drawing him nearer, softly murmuring his name in return. Repeatedly. Until it ceased to feel like a transgression. Simply authentic. In the stillness that followed he turned his gaze toward me. Our bodies entwined in a quiet embrace. Gaze exposed. Defenseless. I understand that this moment is fleeting, he remarked. I gave a slight nod, for we were both aware of it. Yet, in that instant, within that purloined moment upon lent flesh, I was indifferent. I had no desire to step into the role of a wife once more. All I ever desired was to feel desired. He was the sole observer of my gradual vanishing act. Up to this moment,